Nicolas Cage and H.P. Lovecraft come together.
Everything's gonna be A-okay.
Oh yeah, we're doing this. It's time for some crazy Cage. Color Out of Space is the adaptation of the H.P. Lovecraft story, The Color Out of Space. Directed by Richard Stanley, who hasn't made much in the past few years, but is probably most well known for 1996's infamously bad The Island of Dr. Moreau, which is another weird fucking movie. We follow the Gardner family, who live way out in the sticks in New England. Everything with this family seems fairly normal. You got mom and dad, 3 kids, a dog, and some alpacas. Yeah, it's an alpaca farm. I guess that's a thing? One night, a strange meteorite that emits crazy colors crash lands in their front yard. They check it out, and it is a bit of an odd occurrence for a meteorite to land in somebody's yard, but it's not totally unheard of. There's some oohs and ahs from locals, they get on the news, but after that, life seems to move on like normal. Until it doesn't. You see, a day or two after the meteor lands, it suddenly disappears. It seems as if it's sunken down into the ground. They don't really think much about this, they find it a little odd, but just whatever, they move on with life. But then, shit starts getting kinda weird for everybody. It seems like this meteorite somehow is affecting everyone in the family in a different way. Some of the members of the family can hear a reoccurring whistling sound, some of them smell weird smells that nobody else can, and some of them go into these trance-like dazes while they're doing mundane tasks throughout the day. And from there, things escalate. Now, I'm not gonna ruin it, but let's just say, shit gets crazy. When I heard about this movie, I was immediately intrigued. I really like the fact that the trailer gave you a tone of what the film was, but didn't really tell you shit about it. So going into the movie, beyond knowing a meteor lands in these people's front yard, and it's based on an H.P. Lovecraft story, I didn't really know anything about this. And that made the experience all the more better. I don't know exactly what I expected from this movie, but it exceeded those expectations on pretty much every level. This movie was great, and I don't see how it's not getting a bigger release. Don't look to Stanley's previous efforts as a barometer to how this movie will be. This is a focused, well-paced, compelling film that is honestly one of the better films I've seen recently. I want to say for a small movie, it was surprisingly well made, but honestly, for a big movie, it was surprisingly well made. The story's really interesting and at times very personal. It has an intriguing setup and holds you throughout the runtime of the film. When seeing movies like this with these really intriguing setups and kind of out there stories, they will a lot of times run the risk of the conclusion not being as satisfying as the rest of the movie. Be it being too ambiguous, or maybe the writers just writing themselves into a corner and not knowing how to get out of it, or the simple fact that it just doesn't live up to all the intrigue that leads up to it. Fortunately, with Color Out of Space, that is not the case. This is a weird fucking movie for sure, and on its surface it seems kinda out there. But upon closer inspection, everything really does make sense. That doesn't change the fact that it's fucking out there, but it does make sense, and more importantly, has a satisfying conclusion. It also has some genuine horror moments, like legit horror. It's not that shit that we get in a lot of horror movies nowadays. There's no jump scares here, like none at all. They do horror the right way, through building tension and atmosphere. There's some moments in this movie where I legitimately felt uncomfortable. I felt like there was like somebody right behind me. I kept looking around to make sure that I was alone. One scene in the first third of the film where someone's outside using a flashlight is particularly unnerving. Unlike other movies where dark's not really dark, you, the viewer, can see, but the characters, for whatever reason, can't. They use darkness extremely well, because you cannot see. Like, dark is dark. You can't see except for exactly where that flashlight is. And it is really uncomfortable the whole time. There's quite a few of those scenes in this movie where they use tension and atmosphere to truly drive that horror theme home. And it's wonderfully done. Now, regardless of how good the story and atmosphere of this film is, without good characters, it would all fall apart. And thankfully, all the characters and the performances are on par with the story. You're given time to naturally get to know this family and each character individually. So when stuff starts to happen in the story, you actually care about the people that it's happening to. It's really nice to see that they took the time for some really good character building in a movie like this, because you don't get that all the time. And if it didn't take that time to devote to getting to know these characters, when all this other stuff was going on later in the story, you really just wouldn't give a shit and it would all fall apart. Everybody's performance is pretty good too. Now, admittedly, there are a couple of parts where the performances seem a little stilted and forced, but that's mostly closer to the beginning of the film, and they are pretty few and far between. The vast majority of the time, the performances here are really good. While Nicolas Cage is the name that probably will bring a lot of people to this movie, his character isn't actually the one that we follow for the most part. He is a main character, but we spend the vast majority of the film following his kids, played by Madeline Arthur and Brendan Mayer. These two both do a great job, but Arthur does come out with a more memorable performance and character. Now, even though we are following these two, Nicolas Cage is still here, and like I said, he's still a main character. And while watching this movie, you might start to think, holy shit, is Nicolas Cage playing like a straight and narrow normal character this time around? Yeah, you'll think that until about the middle of the movie, and then he does what we're all really here to see, which is Nicolas Cage become all crazy Cage. As you would expect from Nicolas Cage in an H.P. Lovecraft story, he does go all crazy as hell about halfway through. And while we've seen Nicolas Cage do crazy Cage plenty of times, he does it with such excitement, zeal, and gusto that you just can't help but love every minute of him being on screen. I mean, every time this guy plays crazy in a movie, it's like a different kind of crazy. I love it. He is the master of batshit crazy characters, and here he absolutely does not disappoint. Also, Tommy Chong's in this movie in a role that I feel was probably tailor-made just for him, and I couldn't really see anybody else doing this just as perfect. At its heart, this is a science fiction story, and it's also a smaller movie, so we gotta kind of wonder, how are the effects? Well, overall, the effects here are really well done. A lot of the CGI in the movie is like trippy colors and crazy auras and stuff like that, and all that stuff looks great. The few CG things that aren't that kind of thing all look really well too, but the thing that really set me back in my seat and made me say, oh cool, they did that, was the practical effects. There's a lot more practical effects here than I was expecting, and they all look great. Well, I can't really get into what those practical effects are for fear of spoiling something. Let's just say that if you're a fan of Carpenter's The Thing, you'll be really happy here. Guys, I really enjoyed this movie, and I think that if given the chance, it could appeal to a much broader audience than you would think initially. Horror fans, sci-fi fans, Nick Cage batshit crazy fans, all of you, I think, will really enjoy this film. And of course, also H.P. Lovecraft fans. While I haven't read the original story that this movie's based on, my understanding is that it does retain the spirit and feel of that book. And what I do know of Lovecraft's work, I think that Lovecraft fans will enjoy this film. No, there's no Cthulhu in it or anything, but you know what? That's not all Lovecraft wrote about. Some of his best stories have nothing to do with that, but that's just kind of become what a lot of people know about H.P. Lovecraft. Guys, this is a fantastic film with an interesting story, great performances, and a satisfying conclusion. Why it's not getting a wider release, I'll never know, but it is absolutely worth you seeking out and totally worth a buy. Run out and find this one immediately because it is absolutely worth your time and money, and it was just this short of my highest rating of a unicorn. Almost! So there it is, guys, my review of Color Out of Space. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you like what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. While this is a great film, if you have any issues with like body horror, this might not be the one for you. If that's not a problem, then hey, Crazy Cage and body horror. Can't go wrong there.